At the moment, we're looking at pictures of the World Trade Center in New York, which is ablaze as a result of being attacked by two planes, one a 737, which may have been hijacked before it was flown straight into the World Trade Center, but also in Washington, at the heart of U.S. government. There are reports that another plane, a 757, may have flown directly into the heart of the U.S. defense establishment, into the Pentagon. Those are unconfirmed reports, though we have seen pictures of smoke billowing out from the Pentagon. We've got reports that Washington is being evacuated, the very heart of Washington, the U.S. Capitol, including the White House. Earlier, the U.S. President George Bush said he thought they were apparent terrorist attacks and that whoever was responsible would be hunted down. The BBC's Orla Guerin joins us. Orla, what can you tell us?
Well, what we've had here locally is a claim of responsibility. The initial report came from the Reuters news agency. It was quoting Abu Dhabi television and saying that they had received a call from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, claiming that it was responsible for the plane crashes into both of the trade towers. Now, since then, we've managed to check with local spokesmen for that organisation, for the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and two local spokesmen here in the West Bank and Ramallah have denied that. So already there is doubt being cast on this claim, and I think it has to be treated with a great deal of caution at this stage.
We're looking at pictures at the moment. Two enormous fires. The one on the left is in New York, the World Trade Center, which was attacked by two planes around about 9 o'clock this morning. The one on the right, the Pentagon, the U.S. Defense Headquarters. Some reports say that a plane was flown straight into the Pentagon. That is as yet unconfirmed. Palestinian organization, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, has apparently claimed responsibility. Orla Guerin joins us now. Orla, what can you tell us about the DFLP?
Well, I think first of all we should say that that claim does have to be treated with caution, because local spokesmen for that organisation here in the West Bank in Ramallah are denying that they had any involvement. It would be unusual if this organisation was involved. It's quite a small splinter faction of the Palestinian Liberation Organisation. It's believed to be now about the third largest group. It hasn't been involved in airline hijackings in the past, even back in the 1970s, when Palestinian terror groups were carrying out attacks of that kind and were involved in hijackings. It wasn't this faction, it was another one. So I do think we have to be cautious, but the initial claim was reported by the Reuters news agency. They were quoting Abu Dhabi television and saying that they had received a call from the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and in that call they apparently did claim responsibility for both of those aircrafts crashing into the World Trade Towers.
Okay, Orla, thank you for that. We're looking at pictures of two enormous fires, one in New York at the World Trade Center, the other at the Pentagon. They both appear to be the result of deliberate plane crashes, suicide missions. Joining us from Washington is the BBC's Stephen Speech. Stephen, what can you tell us about this situation at the Pentagon?
Well, it seems that a third aircraft is involved. These are the reports we're getting, that a third aircraft has crashed, and it's possible that it actually did crash into the Pentagon or somewhere near the Pentagon. So really quite extraordinary. Not only has this attack, as I think we can call it, been carried out in New York, on the World Trade Center, the symbol of American financial, economic power, but also at the Pentagon, the heart of the U.S. military complex. Quite extraordinary, and I think pretty shocking for most people here.
And what time does this attack at the Pentagon appear to have taken place at, Stephen?
Well, it seems to have been shortly after the attacks on the World Trade Center. Now, it's possible that it didn't happen that long afterwards, that we've only just found out about it, but I think, yes, I mean, you know, we're talking about within an hour of the attack on the World Trade Center, so clearly highly coordinated, very well planned by some very determined people.
The word we get is that the Washington Capitol is being evacuated.
Well, certainly I think government buildings will be evacuated. I think if I was sitting in a US government building here just down the road at the State Department or the Treasury, I think I'd be pretty nervous just seeing all these places, as it were, going up in smoke one after the other. I think you've got to think, well, what's coming next? And I think clearly a sensible move and inevitable move to evacuate these buildings, and just increases the sense of vulnerability that people working for the US government have, and also the sense that there are people out there who just, don't like what they're doing for whatever reason, and are going to try and hit them.
Was there any sense of preparedness in Washington for anything like this in the last few days?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, it's possible that the authorities here knew something was coming. But one thinks if they had any idea that anything on this scale was going to happen, they might have actually asked people not to, not to turn up for work, or have taken the precaution of evacuating these buildings earlier on. So I don't think among people here there was any sense of that. I mean, it was curious. Just the other day, I was walking through Washington, and it did strike me that there are so many prominent people, prominent buildings here. In a sense, this is the heart of power, the heart of the world's only superpower, and a very, very tempting target for people who want to get at the United States. And it does call into question, is it possible to provide absolute security? President Bush wants to provide a missile defense shield for the United States to protect against intercontinental ballistic missiles. Some people think that's possible, others think it isn't. And yet we have here a few planes hijacked in the United States and flying low, avoiding detection by radar, and carrying out these attacks. So it's a pretty sobering day for Americans.
What's the latest information we have, Stephen, on those planes? You said that they'd been hijacked. Do we know that for certain?
This information is still coming in. I mean, we've had some pretty credible reports, and certainly being investigated by the FBI, that the planes were hijacked. I think a couple of them from United Airlines. But we still need to get absolute confirmation of that. And now, of course, we know that all the planes, it seems, planes right around the States are being grounded. So the authorities clearly taking this very seriously, as you would expect them to.
Stephen Sveach, thank you for that. We're just going to take another look at the pictures of the second plane as it flew into the side of the World Trade Center in New York shortly after an earlier plane had attacked the other Trade Center building. Right down in downtown Manhattan, you can see an enormous explosion there. It appears to have been a coordinated attack, because in Washington, the Pentagon has also suffered an attack, or buildings close to the Pentagon appear to have been attacked, also by planes, large planes, possibly as large as a 757. This appears to be a terrorist attack. A Palestinian organization, the DFLP, was said to have been responsible, but a senior official for that organization has denied responsibility. So at the present, we do not know who was responsible for these attacks in the United States, at the World Trade Center in New York and at the Pentagon in Washington. Washington has been evacuated. The heart of Washington, government offices are being evacuated. You can see at the moment pictures from around the Pentagon, rescue workers trying to put out the blaze. We saw an ambulance go by a few minutes ago. Stephen Sveach is in Washington. Stephen, what's the latest information we have?
Well, the latest information is that government buildings around the city, around Washington, D.C., have been evacuated. There is a fire going on at or around the Pentagon. It appears that a third plane crashed into or very nearby the Pentagon, in addition to the two planes that crashed into the World Trade Center. No reports of casualties here in Washington, but I think many casualties, certainly perhaps 5 more dead in the World Trade Center, and many, many injured.
Joining us now is Greg Barrow in New York. Greg, what's the latest information from the World Trade Center?
Well, the latest we have is that the whole area has been sealed off. The police and security personnel are down there trying to clear members of the public away. This was a very, very busy time of the morning in New York, just as everybody was going into their offices, so it couldn't really have come at a worse time. And I think that the search is already beginning for those who may be to blame for this incident that has really, truly shocked people, not just here in New York, but also around the country.
Any word on